Hey Latchkey Kids, and shout out to the Drive-In Mutants. Welcome back to the Dollathon, aka Summer of the Dolls. I paired Annabelle with Robert because they're both about haunted dolls that come from real life. Before I get into the review for Annabelle, let's revisit the true life story of Annabelle right quick. Annabelle is a reportedly haunted Raggedy Ann doll. According to Ed and Lorraine Warren, self-described paranormal investigators and demonologists, a student nurse was given the doll in 1968. They say the doll behaved strangely, and that the psychic medium told the student that the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a dead girl named Annabelle. They say the student and her roommate tried to accept and nurture the spirit-possessed doll, but the doll reportedly exhibited malicious and frightening behavior. It was at this point that the Warrens say they were first contacted, and that they removed the doll to their museum after pronouncing it demonically possessed. The doll is kept in a glass box at the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. The real Annabelle doll used to leave notes that read "help me, help us," etc. on parchment paper. Neither of the roommates had parchment paper. They also reported that they would leave the doll sitting on the bed and return home to find it on the couch, or that its arms and legs would be in a different position. One day, a male friend was taking a nap and woke up to find the doll staring at him. He said that he had a feeling that he was being strangled, and he also experienced deep scratch marks on his body. The women at first thought that an intruder was moving the doll around and leaving the notes. When they ruled that out, according to the Occult Museum website, quote, knowing where to turn, they contacted a medium and a seance was held. The girls were introduced to the spirit of Annabelle Higgins. She was said to be a young girl that resided on the property before the apartments were built and died there at age 7. According to the website, the spirit related to the medium that she felt comfort with the two roommates in the apartment and wanted to stay with them and be loved. The roommates gave Annabelle permission to inhabit the doll, but things got worse. The Warrens took an interest in the case and contacted the women. They came to the immediate conclusion that the doll itself was not in fact possessed but manipulated by an inhuman presence, according to the Warrens website. It goes on to say, quote, truly the spirit was not looking to stay attached to the doll, it was looking to possess a human host. The Warrens took the doll, and Ed Warren told his wife they should avoid the highway because it was going to be a rough ride home. He was right, and at one point he had to sprinkle holy water onto Annabelle in order for her to calm down. This is according to the New Haven Register. People who have visited Annabelle at Ed Lorraine's museum and disrespected her have experienced negative repercussions. Once a young couple visited the museum and the boyfriend made fun of Annabelle, taunting her and challenging her to do something. When they left, they got into a motorcycle accident and the boyfriend died. A priest from Hartford threw the doll and admonished the demon inside. On his way home, he was in a car accident, totaling his car. Fortunately, he survived. He reports that the last thing he saw before getting hit by a truck was Annabelle in his rearview mirror. Now that you know the history of Annabelle, let's talk about the movie. This movie doesn't tell the story that I just recounted to you that was actually covered as a subplot in The Conjuring. And I'm sure by now you all know that Ed and Lorraine Warren have investigated thousands of cases, including those covered in the movie, the Amityville haunting, A Haunting in Connecticut, and The Conjuring movies. The story told in the Annabelle movie might remind one more of the Manson family murders and Sharon Tate than the Annabelle legend, but I'll come back to that later. This movie gets a lot of crap because it was not what people expected. It was way more low-key than what people expected. I remember the biggest complaint people had was that Annabelle didn't move. I think people were expecting her to be more like Chucky. But by this point in time, we know not to expect that from Annabelle. That said, this movie is not as bad as what people say. There's actually a classification between good and bad. My classification between good and bad is mediocre. That's what this movie is. The main couple are so dumb, like stereotypical people in a horror movie dumb. They are literally listening to the news of Charles Manson family killing of Sharon Tate. And the wife tells the husband, you know, we should start locking our doors because the world has changed now. Do you think he does? Nope. Later, the neighbors are attacked and he goes outside to find out what's going on. He comes running back out of the neighbor's house covered in blood and tells the wife to call the police. She runs in the house to call the police. Do you think she closes and locks the door behind her? Nope, doesn't even close the door behind her. The couple eventually gets attacked as well, and I kind of find it a little bit messed up that in the movie, one of the attackers stabs her in the stomach and it just was dead on like what happened to a pregnant Sharon Tate. And I don't know, I have mixed feelings about that. It's a little messed up since it happened to a real person. But then again, everything that happens, not everything, but a lot of things that happen in horror movies have happened in real life. Like, you watch all the Friday the 13th series, people are getting stabbed, people get stabbed in real life. So just in case you don't know who Sharon Tate is, she was married to the famous director Roman Polanski, and as if being married to a notorious child wasn't bad enough, the Manson family broke into her home and stabbed her to death, stabbed her house guests to death, and also a couple neighbors. This was part of their helter-skelter plan, which was to try to start a race war. Their idea was to do these murders and then leave cult symbols on the wall and other sayings on the wall to make it look like black people had done the killings. And so that was supposed to incite a race war, which makes it really messed up that Quentin Tarantino's trying to do a comedy based off this. I kind of feel like, how do you make that into a comedy? I guess we saw with Django, how do you make that into a comedy? It's just, okay, seems a little disrespectful to me. Anyway, back to the movie. The neighbor's daughter runs in and she slits her throat while holding the Annabelle doll and bleeds on the doll, and the doll absorbs the blood, and we're meant to believe her soul. After the attack of the neighbors and the couple, the dumbass husband still has to be reminded to lock the door. Seriously, your wife just got stabbed by an intruder and you can't remember to lock the door. The wife isn't much smarter because she doesn't know how to make Jiffy Pop, and her legs suddenly don't work when she needs to run. Have you ever burned popcorn? It smells up the entire house. There's no way for you to miss that you burned popcorn. Fire also smells. Consequently, after the house catches fire, they move into an apartment building. Before they move, the husband throws Annabelle away, but apparently she got out of the garbage and packed herself into some boxes, and she pops up like, surprise, bitch, I bet you thought you saw the last of me. And what does his wife do? Not throw her away again, no. She puts her in the nursery with the other dolls. Another strange thing she kept doing, once she had that baby, she kept leaving that baby alone a lot. Like, constantly. The thing that I get a kick out of Annabelle about is that she acts like a complete jerk. Like, leaving those drawings of the wife, seeing the baby in the stroller getting hit by a truck, that's a jerky thing to do. And I still got a kick out of those drawings, I don't know why. When you think about it, getting hit by trucks is Annabelle's thing. Remember what I said about the people that taunted the real Annabelle in the occult museum? What happened to them? Very often car accidents. Annabelle also likes to blast light favorites on a record player and jump scare the hell out of the wife for kicks. The best scene in this movie is the elevator scene and well, not so much the stair scene, the elevator scene. It scared the crap out of me the first time I saw it. It was just really, because you can't see much, and it was just so tense, and how do I describe it? More creepy than scary. I think that's a better thing, because you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for the demon to get her. It was executed beautifully. Did I forget to mention the magical mystical Negro who owns the bookstore and exists only to explain demonology to the wife? I actually don't 100% agree with that. Well, at first I didn't 100% agree with that, because we are given a backstory on her, how she lost her daughter, her trying to commit suicide. Her character's fleshed out a little bit. Plus, she goes on to explain the circumstances of her daughter's death and how she'll never be a grandparent, and it kind of gives us her reasoning for wanting to have a friendship with the wife. The couple eventually reaches out to a priest for help, and Annabelle messes that priest up, which might be a callback to the story I told you earlier about the real life Annabelle and what she did to that priest in Hartford. I like how this movie was shot. It's a good looking movie. The set design, the locations, lighting, everything looked great. I especially like the scene where Annabelle appears to be sitting up, then standing, then levitating, and then just so slightly you finally make out that it's the demon holding Annabelle up. And I love the way that it's done in such a way that you can just barely see it, because it kind of reminds you of when things like that happen in real life. Like when you see that shadow at the corner of your eye, you never fully see it clearly, you just barely see it. It's enough to creep you out. The climax of the movie was alright until the neighbor turned into the magical mystical Negro who also sacrificed herself to help people that she met about a week ago. The ending was so janky, I would have preferred if they just went with a cliche exorcism or something. Although that would have been kind of funny if they did a doll exorcism. I sort of wish that the story with the roommates had been expanded into a full-length movie, but that story may not have lended itself to sequels as well as this did, especially considering how the Annabelle trilogy wraps back around on itself. This was written by Gary Doberman and directed by John Leonetti. I think the direction was stronger than the writing. That might have been a time issue because it seems like this was fast-tracked after the success of The Conjuring. This is not as awful as what people make it out to be, but it's also not as good as it could have been. How'd you feel about this first Annabelle movie? Were you aware of the Annabelle legend? Let me know in the comments and I'll be back in a moment to talk about Robert. Robert, may I please show your picture in this video so that I might tell people about you? Thank you. The tagline for Robert is, before Chucky, before Annabelle, there was Robert. Which is true because I just finished telling you about the real Annabelle. Annabelle terrorized roommates in 1968, some articles say, in 1970, other articles say. Whereas Robert the doll terrorized a Key West family in the early 1900s, about 1904 to be exact. It's actually been debated that Child's Play was inspired by Robert the doll, but Don Mancini denies this. But still, there's a lot of similarities between Robert's story and Chucky's. Check this out. The doll originally belonged to Robert Eugene Otto, an artist described as eccentric who belonged to a prominent Key West family. The doll was reportedly manufactured by the Steiff Company of Germany. Purchased by Otto's grandfather while on a trip to Germany in 1904 and given to young Otto as a birthday gift, the doll's sailor suit was likely an outfit that Otto wore as a child. According to legend, the doll has supernatural abilities that allow it to move, change its facial expressions, and make giggling sounds. Some versions of the legend claim that a young girl of Bahamian descent gave Otto the doll as a gift or as retaliation for a wrongdoing. Other stories claim that the doll moved voodoo figurines around the room and was aware of what went on around him. Still, other legends claim that the doll vanished after Otto's house changed ownership a number of times after his death, or that young Otto triggered the doll's supernatural powers by blaming his childhood mishaps on the doll. According to local folklore, the doll has caused car accidents, broken bones, job loss, divorce, and a cornucopia of other misfortunes. And museum visitors supposedly experience post-visit misfortunes for failing to respect Robert. You must first ask Robert if you can take his photo, which is why I did that. Visitors who take photos without permission report having misfortune and strange events happen to them after they have disrespected Robert. So much so that he has, as you can see in this image, amassed a lot of letters of apology, which is why I asked his permission to even show pictures other people have taken of him in this video. Better safe than sorry. Anyway, did you pick up on any similarities between Robert the doll's story and Child's Play? For example, a child blaming mishaps on a doll, or perhaps a voodoo spell being placed on a doll. Don Mancini may claim not to have been influenced or inspired by this story, but what do you guys think? Now that we've gone over the real life story of Robert the doll, let's talk about the movie that is made in his name. I get that the director was trying to be creative, but all these low angles are not the business at all. This looks way more like a TV program than a movie. At some points you can even see the reflection of the boom mic in the cabinets. They're tried. There's a scene where the maid is meant to be polishing the table, but she doesn't start polishing the table until the wife walks in. It's almost like you can't hear it, but you can see where they said action and then she started wiping the table. The fact that they didn't edit that out. Like you really could have just easily edited that out. The camera is all up in people's faces. Like 80% of the scenes are shot like this. You don't need, like, it'll be a shot and reverse shot, and both characters, their faces are this close to the camera. Why? I don't understand. Now I can't see. because I went so close to the light, and I have like residual white lights, and I'm trying to look at my notes. Okay, it's coming back. Where was I? Okay. Regarding the shooting too close, at first I chalked it up to location, like maybe they don't have a lot of space because they're shooting on location. But then I'm thinking I'm shooting on a cheap camera, and I'm sure they're using a way more expensive camera than what I'm using, and I'm only maybe 2.5 feet from the camera because that's the amount of space I have. I feel like they just could have done better. Add to that, they keep shooting up from the floor for no reason, and it's not, well, I shouldn't say for no reason. Clearly they're trying to make it Robert's point of view, but it's too low because the doll looks to be about 2 feet tall if it were to stand, but the camera angle looks like it's shooting from the point of view of maybe a cat. This movie has a budget Lin Shaye with budget Lin Shaye lines. She literally says, "It's not the house that is haunted, it's the doll." They established that the wife, Jen, has had previous psychiatric issues, which they're pretty much setting it up so that when she sees something or hears something, that her husband will not believe her because of these previous psychiatric issues. The husband's name is Paul, by the way. The family eventually fires the maid, Agatha, aka Budget Lin Shaye. But before she leaves, she gives the son the Robert doll. Sound familiar? Like maybe perhaps a Bahamian servant girl who might have put voodoo on a doll. Kind of like this maid Agatha who might have put voodoo on a doll and gave it to a child. Very similar. Good job with that. I do like the little boy in this movie. His name is Eugene, and the original little boy who received Robert the doll was named Eugene as well. This movie uses footprints in the flour, like Child's Play, except for it's not flour, it's sugar this time. The score pays homage to Halloween. Robert acts a little bit like Annabelle by doing little jerky stuff like spilling the sugar, ruining the mother's paintings, stuff that's annoying but not necessarily harmful, until he pushes the new maid down the stairs. Her name is Martha. I don't know what, for some reason in this movie I remember everyone's name. I remember that the mother's name is Jen and the father's name is Paul and the son's name is Eugene, and the first maid was named Agatha and the second name was named Martha, which is interesting because I usually never remember anyone's name in movies, but I think it's because of the dialogue in this movie, people come and saying each other's names, that I remember all the characters' names. The second maid, Martha, gets thrown down the stairs, and at first she is just, dead at the end of the stairs. Then the camera cuts away, then it cuts back, and she suddenly has blood on her head for no reason. It was so weird. And something about the husband, Paul, reminded me of one of the victims from American Werewolf in London. I think the one that was in a subway with a briefcase. He reminded me of that guy. Regarding the design of the doll, I did not mention the design of the doll in the Annabelle review because it doesn't bother me that much. She's a little odd looking, but I got used to her. This doll, I hate the design of this doll. And real life Robert, please be advised that what I'm about to say is about the fake ass Robert, not you. We good? Good. Fake Robert has a pencil neck and a big head. Fake Robert has maniac cop jaw. Fake Robert's shirt says all aboard, but his pants say batter up. Fake Robert wears a sweater sleeve for a turtleneck. His middle name is Mudbone, and on top of all that, he's got a glass eye with a fish in it. Name that rap reference without Googling it. I don't condone domestic violence, but when Jen smacked Paul, I understood. People keep dying in your house, Paul, while your wife is not home. So it doesn't matter what kind of medication she's on, you have to admit that there's a problem. You daft prick. The actress playing Jen is acting her natural ass off. They gave her lemons and she made lemonade. Brava to you. Poor little Gene. 90% of his scenes are in this bed with these dinosaur sheets. Anyway, it's up to Jen to solve the mystery. So she goes to visit the home of the maid that gave the doll to her son. When she finds out that she is deceased, she goes to visit her previous employer. So they put her up on game about Robert the doll. And this movie feels too long. It just didn't have enough material to be 90 minutes long. It would have worked better at 70 minutes long. Like cut a firm 20 minutes out of it and this movie would have worked a lot better. Plus I was so sick of the director shooting so close to people's faces and at a low angle so it's directly up their noses. Please pull back a little bit. You have to remember some people are watching these on like 60 and 75-inch TV screens, or maybe they're projecting it. It's just too much. And at one point this movie wants you to be afraid of a doll with a wiffle ball bat, and plus, did I mention I'm not a fan of the camera work? I did like how they put real references to the Robert legend in the movie. Robert has a series of sequels all a year apart. This one came out in 2015. The Curse of Robert the Doll in 2016. Robert and the Toy Maker 2017. The Revenge of Robert the Doll 2018. And I just now found out that on July 2nd, literally a few days ago, Robert Reborn 2019 has been released. All by the same director, Andrew Jones. You guys think I should review this series? I mean, after I finish the Annabelle movies? I'm kind of interested to see how this director progresses. What say you? Keep in mind, next I do plan on doing an international doll movie week because there are so many doll movies from other countries that are great. Speaking of which, I forgot to mention that this Robert the Doll movie is from Wales, England, or Wales, UK, I should say. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Someone from UK, please correct me if I'm wrong in saying Wales, England. I think I've seen it written as Wales, UK. Specifically, it was filmed in Saundersfoot and Swansea in Wales. Now that I say that, I think that finishing the whole Robert the Doll series might be a great lead-in to my International Doll Week, which I don't know if you can tell I'm excited about because I really found some doll movies from all over the world. Have you seen the Robert the Doll movie? What did you think? Have you ever been to Key West and seen the real Robert the Doll? Let me know in the comments. I almost forgot to mention that all of the Robert the Doll movies except for the last one are free to watch on Amazon Prime. So that's probably why I'm not super upset about how bad this Robert the Doll movie was, because I didn't pay to watch it. So I think if I paid to see it, I would be super disappointed. But after seeing Robert the Doll, I really am going to defend Annabelle that much more. And now it's time for my sign off. Like I always say, just because I love something doesn't mean you won't hate it. Just because I hate something doesn't mean you won't love it. What do you think of both Annabelle and Robert the Doll? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know if you want me to finish the whole Robert the Doll series. I'll let you guys tell me. Bye.